the boy who refused to stay invisible. Simon Cowell, a name that today echoes across the world as the man who reshaped entertainment, the sharp-tongued judge who created stars, the producer who transformed television itself. But before the spotlight, before the fame, there was a boy no one noticed, a quiet, restless soul who learned early what it meant to be unseen. Born in 1959 in Lambeth, London, Simon grew up in Elstree, Hertfordshire, a town calm on the surface, but for him, filled with silent battles. His mother, Julie Brett, a graceful ballet dancer, lived in elegance but offered little warmth. His father, Eric Cowell, a disciplined music executive, valued results over reassurance. Together they built a house of glamour, but not a home of affection. "My father never said, 'I'm proud of you,'" Simon once admitted. That small absence became a lifelong wound, shaping the man he would become. At school, he was the kid who questioned rules, the student teachers called difficult. He wasn't the golden child his parents hoped for, just another face in back of the room, waiting to be seen. By his late teens, rejection had already become familiar. When his grades fell short, his father reluctantly arranged a job for him in the mailroom of EMI Music. From sorting fan letters to fetching coffee for producers who never remembered his name, Simon saw firsthand how fame worked and how easily dreams got buried under the weight of indifference. He often said later, "I was invisible in a world obsessed with the spotlight." At times, he'd hide in the bathroom after work, fighting tears he refused to let anyone see. Failure haunted him, but it also hardened him. The silence that once broke him slowly became his training ground. From neglect, he learned determination. From humiliation, defiance. And when the world refused to notice him, Simon decided he'd make it impossible to ignore him. He studied not just music, but power itself. How songs could move hearts, how audiences were captured, how stars were built. He realized success wasn't gifted to the chosen few. It was engineered by those willing to outlast rejection. That understanding would one day turn the invisible mailroom boy into the most powerful name in television. But before the rise came the fall, and the fall was brutal. The young man who was finally starting to taste success was about to lose everything, and face the one truth that nearly broke him. In the world of fame, nothing shines forever. From ashes to ambition. After years of quietly studying the industry from a mailroom, Simon Cowell finally decided it was time to take a risk. The boy who once fetched coffee now dared to dream of owning a label. In the early 1980s, alongside his partners, he launched Fanfare Records, a bold gamble built on confidence, not capital. At first, it seemed like the universe was finally on his side. Songs like So Macho became instant hits. For a brief, glittering moment, Simon was living the fantasy. Champagne nights, magazine features, and handshakes with people who once pretended he didn't exist. Success had a sweet taste, especially for someone who had swallowed so much failure. But dreams built too quickly often collapse faster. By the decade's end, the market had shifted, and so had his luck. Fanfare Records, the empire he thought would make him untouchable, came crashing down. Contracts dissolved. Partners vanished. And just like that, Simon Cowell, barely in his 30s, was left with nothing but debt and despair. He returned to the one place he had sworn he'd never see again, his parents' house. The same childhood room, the same silence, now echoing with the weight of failure. To the world, it was just a failed business. To Simon, it felt like proof that the ghost of his childhood, the whispers of "you're not enough," had finally won. He once confessed that during that time, "I felt like a ghost haunting my own life." Days blurred into nights filled with self-doubt. He had built something from nothing, only to lose it all again. But beneath that despair, something stronger began to grow. Instead of running from his mistakes, he dissected them. He studied audiences, producers, and the psychology of fame. He realized the industry didn't reward purity. It rewarded connection. Success wasn't about making art that critics praised. It was about creating moments that ordinary people felt. He rebuilt himself, not through luck, but through calculation. The man who once cried in silence was learning how to make the world listen. By the early 1990s, Simon was ready to return to the battlefield. But this time, Armed with experience, hunger, and a plan, he joined BMG Records, starting again from the bottom, carrying the weight of bankruptcy but the wisdom of failure. And soon, the world that once ignored him would be forced to listen. Because in just a few short years, Simon Cowell would turn rejection into revolution and change television forever. The rise of the relentless. The 1990s became Simon Cowell's second beginning, a quieter one, built not on glitter but on grit. At BMG Records, he wasn't a visionary to be celebrated. He was a man marked by failure, whispered about in corridors as the one who lost it all. But Simon wasn't there for approval anymore. He was there to win. He studied not the stars, but the people buying their records. He noticed something that others in boardrooms didn't. Critics don't buy music. Ordinary people do. While the industry chased timeless art, Simon chased the pulse of the masses. He didn't care about prestige. He cared about what moved hearts, what sold tickets, what filled rooms with sound and emotion. So he signed the acts everyone else laughed at, boy bands, soap stars, and pop duos. They weren't cool, but they connected. Westlife, Robson, and Jerome. 5. Artists mocked by the elite, but adored by millions. Each hit proved Simon right. Fame wasn't built on perfection, but on connection. Still, the success came with scars. The same critics who called him lucky called him shallow. They said he was ruining the art of music. But Simon didn't flinch. Every insult was fuel. He knew the world didn't reward the polite. It rewarded the bold. Then came 2001, the year that transformed him from a music executive into a cultural phenomenon. He stepped from the shadows of boardrooms onto television screens with Pop Idol. Many predicted he'd fail. They called him too blunt, too cruel, too British to charm an audience. But the very honesty that scared executives electrified viewers. For the first time, audiences met a judge who didn't pretend. He said what everyone else was thinking, and it changed everything. Pop Idol became a global obsession. People tuned in not just to see who sang best, but to hear what Simon would say next. When American Idol launched in 2002, it turned him from a judge into a household name. Millions watched his raised eyebrow, his pauses, his sharp one-liners. The boy once invisible in a mailroom was now the most powerful voice on television. But the higher Simon climbed, the lonelier the summit became. Behind the fame, the empire, and the power, a darker truth was beginning to form. Because soon, the man who judged the world would find himself facing judgment. And this time, the verdict would break him.